Yep.
Hi, this is Behind the Screens, episode 5, back after a week hiatus. Thank you all that have tuned in. It's going to be an awesome show as usual. We are having a little bit of a different crew this evening. Simpatico is not our stream producer. I want to, in advance, thank our awesome stream producer, Wigan. And I think that this show is going to be great. I want to, before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about the sponsor of this show and of Stim TV in general, Underline Entertainment. Underline Entertainment just, it made that song that you just heard, that our theme song, specifically for us, because they're awesome, and we love them so much for doing so. Go check them out at underlineent.com. And on that note, let's jump right into this. So our guest tonight is a former producer for places such as CNET.com and Justin TV, and is the current head video production at the IGN Pro League. Please welcome Neha Tewari. Neha, how are you?
Hello. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. I'm really glad to be back on the air.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on as well.
It should be a good show. I'm looking forward to it, and so I understand that you've seen the show before.
Yeah, I've seen it. You've had a couple of people that I'm fans of on the show, including Sir Scoots and, of course, Anna Prosser, two people that I very much like, and they're probably two of my favorite people in esports, in fact. So I have caught those episodes.
Well, it's both of those episodes were a pleasure to do, and I have to admit I keep going back to this, but that first episode where I got caught not paying attention, that was embarrassing, and hopefully that won't happen this time, even though all my other Skype conversations are doing their best to get me sidetracked. But let's get back to you. So let's start with just the really basic stuff. Where were you born?
I was born in Concord, California, which is a city here in the East Bay. It's a small place. My parents immigrated there from India in 1980, and I was born a few years thereafter, and that's where I grew up. I've always been an East Bay girl. I went to college at UC Berkeley, and I've always worked in San Francisco, so I am a true Bay Area girl.
So did you grow up bilingual?
I did. I mean, interestingly enough, a lot of people always think it's that English was my first language because I'm very conversational, but I actually didn't know English until I was about 5 years old. So English was not my first language. It was my second language. I used to even actually take ESL classes in like first grade and stuff like that. But I still try to speak Hindi, which is my mother tongue. And, I think it's important to basically have that skill. I find it to be very beneficial. And also it's a key to another culture. So that's what I love about it.
That multiculturalness, has that helped you in esports, being that it's such a global area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I like so much about gaming and specifically esports is that it is a global game. You could be anywhere and you can play someone from, a different server or, you could go to Korea to compete or, obviously the Koreans, they come here to compete. So it's just like this open playing field, which, I don't think that there is that with any other sport. You're going to hear me compare esports to just, your regular sports quite a bit because that's kind of how we think of esports at IPL. We don't think it's just for gamers. We think it's something that can appeal to a mass crowd. The NFL or NBA, they didn't start the way they did. And we believe that esports will one day be, very mainstream and just like how someone would enjoy a ball game with their kid.
Well, that's very similar to what was being said at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference just what, 2 weeks ago, and the video of the esports discussion there was released today. Was it today or yesterday? I don't know, but anyway, uh, I mean, there wasn't anyone from IGN there, but there were a lot of esports folks there.
Hmm.
And have you gotten to watch it yet?
I haven't actually.
Oh, well, to everyone out there, watch it because it's awesome. And there's a lot of, for those of us that have been following esports and are, in the community, it's old hat. But for a lot of people, it's new stuff, and it's really good to be seeing that. So that's a plug for something completely different. So going back, because we skipped over a lot. So you said you spent your whole academic life in California?
Yeah, I did. I've always wanted to go to UC Berkeley, and I was lucky enough to get in, and those were great years. I majored in mass communication because I've always, that's always been my interest. I find it very interesting how, especially now with technology, there's just so many different ways to communicate with each other, whether if it's with Twitter, Facebook, texting, email, like, sky's the limit. And it's interesting because I always think about the way that I communicate with certain people. And a long time ago, it was just the phone and you'd pick up the phone and call somebody. But now it's like, I only talk on the phone really to my mother. I mean, there's really no one else
Yeah.
that I like, have that conversation with. Mostly it's done by text or Facebook or whatnot. So it's been really interesting being in the Bay Area and watching a lot of technology evolve, and to the point like now where we're here, where there's just unlimited. There's Google Plus. There's so many ways we're Skyping right now.
Yep.
But anyway, that all came from a deep love of communication, and that's why I majored in that. And I think that's kind of my specialty. That's what I do is I communicate.
And where
So
did that love of communication originate? You studied that in college, but what happened before then? What was high school like for you? High school is always a painful time, and there's always amusing stories that come out of that.
oh, high school. High school wasn't too bad. It was the type of thing where I mean, I wouldn't say I was like a cool kid. I was somewhere in between, and I took all the AP classes and did all that, and I also played tennis, and but I also like to party and hang out and stuff like that too. So it was pretty like balanced, and I loved, that's probably when I was most into comic books. So that's another thing about me is I'm a comic book geek. I started collecting comic books when I was probably about 7 years old. And although I don't collect as much as I used to now, I just kind of pick up a few series here and there. I used to love going to comic book conventions growing up with my brother, who's been like a huge influence on my life because he is like the biggest geek that I know. So, but I always kind of idolized that and wanted to emulate that. And so back to communication, my mom is a great communicator. She's like the glue of the family. She's the person who holds us all together, and she does that just because she talks to us. And I think I saw that value from a very young age, and I was also very interested in the way that like my dad. My dad's has a very charming personality in the sense that he can just like when he's talking to people, he can just turn it on, and I was always very fascinated by that as well. So I think some combination of my mom's communication style and my father's communication style made it seem like it was a very important thing, and I think that's probably where it came from. And my first internship ever when I was in college was at a place called Tech TV. I don't know if you remember that, but they used to have shows like The Screensavers, and they got bought out by G4 later on. But when I was working there, I was like, that's when I realized that like I could work somewhere and like marry my passions together of like communication, video production, and just being a huge nerd. And I was like, yes, this is the place for me. And I was so excited, and it was such a great group of people. And then they moved down to LA, and I was still in college. But I knew that was the path for me, was like this,
Mhm.
geeky niche of journalism or of production. That's what I wanted to do.
We'll go back to your family in a second. What was your favorite comic book growing up?
It's funny, growing up, I used to really like DC comics mostly because of the visual presentation of them. I really liked kind of like the darker hues and like the more, just it was just darker, more grim. It was gritty.
Mhm.
I liked that about DC comic books. But as I actually, it's just kind of classic. As I grew up and kind of like went through puberty and all that, I got into Marvel comics because that's always like the classic story of the kid who doesn't fit in, or my favorite is as you can see on my shirt is Spider-Man.
Right.
I really, I mean, I think, but he wasn't my first favorite. But I now consider him to be my absolute favorite. I always like to see what's going on in the life of Spidey. Although, ironically, I'm not too excited about this reboot that's going on for some reason. But I've always been into him as a character, and I've always liked his style. So,
We always want at least one rant. So, do you want to use your rant now on the reboot, or do you want to save it for later for something else?
hmm, I'll save it.
Okay. All right.
I'll save it.
Um, so, did that passion go and expand into graphic novels? I mean, I'll admit, and I'm going to lose a lot of nerd points here. I was never a comic book guy, um, probably because my parents wouldn't let me. But
Let's talk about that. Okay.
well, yeah, not okay. Anyway, but I did love Watchmen. When I read Watchmen, I found an entire new genre of literature. Did your passion in comic books expand into that area, or does your uh, higher reading pleasures go elsewhere?
Um, I'm sorry. So you're asking me if I like to read comic books, like graphic novels, or
Just what I mean, what do you read beyond
oh, beyond comic books?
beyond comic books, I guess?
Um, well, gosh, I guess recently it's been The Hunger Games, which I guess everyone's reading right now. But I finished that whole series about a month and a half ago, or a month ago, maybe. So I'm very, very excited about those movies that are coming out, the first one at least. And I can't wait. I already have my ticket for opening day. I'm super stoked on that. I'm actually also reading right now the Lord of the Rings series. I've read like the first book and half of the second book, but I never finished it all the way through. So I'm like, okay, I need to and I want to do it in like one sitting. So I want to read, all three books and then maybe like the Silmarillion. And then, then I was thinking, wait, maybe I should go back and start with The Hobbit and just do the whole comprehensive thing,
Yeah.
because the Hobbit movie's coming out as well. But so that's my next project of things to read. And before that, I read the Harry Potter books. Actually, one of my favorite authors is a woman called Mary Roach, and she's done a few like just really well written books about different topics in science. She's done one about space travel. She's done one about human cadavers. She's done one about sex. She's done one like she does these like really interesting kind of just like studies of different subjects and how they apply to people. And anyway, it's very interesting, and I love her books. I love her style. It's witty and interesting. So
Going back to your family, your parents moved here. How old were they when they moved here?
my parents were in their early 30s, which
And
blows my mind to think about because I'm like, wow, they were basically around my age, and I couldn't imagine picking up and moving to a new country.
what did they do when they got to the United States? Or what did they do beforehand? And then what did they do when they got here?
So my dad was a professor at a well-regarded all-girls university in India, and he used to teach sociology. My mother at the time in India was just a housewife. She used to watch over my brother, and she's an amazing seamstress, and she loves cooking. She has all those great talents.
Mm.
Um, and when they moved here, it was unfortunate because my dad's job just didn't really translate because as you know, sociology is the study of people, and when you move to a different country, it's a different set of people. So,
Right.
it was frustrating, I think, just because both of my parents really did have to start at the bottom and work their way up. They worked in a McDonald's. They did. Both of my parents are, they have multiple master's degrees, and they were working, for minimum wage at a McDonald's. But they worked very hard, and that's something that I learned very early growing up. My brother and I, both of us, um, you know, I've, I've said this before, probably not publicly, but we didn't grow up with a lot of money, but I think that really has helped me value a lot of things. And just going back to gaming, it's kind of funny because, I remember when we got we always didn't get the new game console, like I know a lot of kids growing up, they always had like the new game console under their tree. But anytime we did, it was always like amazing. Like we were always so excited because we never really thought we could like afford that type of stuff.
Right.
But when we had, like we got the original, I think my brother had an Atari, and then we got the original Nintendo, and then, we had some systems in between there intermittently, but it was always really exciting. And like I said, my parents were incredibly hard workers, and not they never cared. They never cared if about what they were doing as long as the family was happy. They didn't think about like, oh, I'm so well educated and here I am working, at this place with high school kids. Like they never felt that way. And they worked their way up from that. My dad started selling insurance. My mom, she actually is, she had her master's in chemistry. So she's actually a chemist. But it took her, she had to take classes and stuff to convert it, and it took time. But then she finally ended up becoming a chemist here as well. So yeah, that was, they both my dad used to work nights, my mom used to work days, and so that's how they used to manage taking care of us.
The I don't want to insert too much, politics into this, but does people talk about the American dream? Do you think that would apply to your parents? That sort of dream of coming to the United States and then, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does. Um, I think the American dream is you always hear it in cliche like movies or whatnot of, oh, I came to this country with one suitcase and $5 in my pocket. But yeah, really, I mean, my parents did. And, now they're retired, which is wonderful. And my brother and I both help support them. But because, my dad started working when he was like 13 years old to support himself. But, they did. And at the end of, it all, like my mom, they actually used to own a sandwich franchise. So it was the kind of thing where they kind of started at, working minimum wage at a McDonald's. And then, at the end of it, they ended up owning their own sandwich chain. So
Right.
that was, to me, I think that's kind of like a really interesting full circle. And even though it was hard, and again, the hard working never stopped. Like we used to all help as a family business, myself and my brother. My brother would be visiting from medical school, and he would come, help out and like make sandwiches and fill in so my mom could go home. And I would do the same all throughout college. And I think it's just the work ethic. It's the work ethic that's just always been there. And I think the American dream that's what it's all about. That is what it is. It's about working your butt off to achieve success.
You've talked a little bit about your brother, and you said that he was the biggest nerd you know. Were those the words you used? Uh, Tell us about him. Or do you have any other siblings, or just your
No,
brother?
I have one older brother. We're actually 10 years apart. So people always think like, oh, you must not be that close, or, you probably never really like matched up in times of growing up and whatnot. But we're actually insanely close. He's probably like one of my best friends. He's now married and has a 1-year-old daughter who's like my life. I love her to death. But he's always, he was the one who used to take me to comic book conventions. He was the one that used to play Contra with me. and he was a big influence. Like he was my cool older brother, and I wanted to be into whatever he was doing. And so that's where like this like love for all these kind of like nerdy things started. We used to watch Star Trek together, and we still do, in fact. Like, we still make references to that. Like he's a big who he is actually really influenced who I am, and in the best way possible. Um, and he's just an all-around great guy that I truly respect, and I'm so happy that he's part of my life, and that we are such good friends. But it wasn't always that way. He also was kind of like when I was a teenager, he was like the father figure. So it's kind of funny when I used to bring boys over, they weren't scared of my dad, they were scared of him. So he was kind of like the litmus test, because my dad would be like a nice, easygoing guy, and he would be the one grilling him. So that was always funny. But he's always had my best interest in mind, and I appreciate that.
So, talking about bringing boys home, what was the worst date you ever went on, or the best? Just whichever extreme you want to tell us about.
Hmm. Gosh, you have to understand I haven't been on a date in a really long time because, well, I'm married now. So, let's see. Best date I ever went on. That's a hard one. I really haven't thought about this in like a
Were
really
there
long.
any miserable failures?
Yeah. Yeah, there were. I mean, there were times, I mean, I dated guys where it was like a setup, and it was kind of like, okay, and you are so not my type right now, and you'd go through these awkward dinners, and
Mhm.
I had a pretty long streak of those for a little while. So I think it's just a bunch of like mediocre dates clumped together,
Okay.
more than just having like one worst. It was just a bad period of time where it was just a lot of very mediocre bad dates of people that I just didn't click with. But there's not one that like sticks out as like the worst.
So, academically growing up, did your brother went to med school? Did he end up becoming a doctor?
Yes.
How so? Um, he was obviously a good student, and you were talking about having taken a bunch of AP classes in high school. How would you described yourself as a student?
Um, I think like I said, I took all the AP classes. I was always into getting good grades, because that was the expectation. But in some ways, my parents were not so traditional in the sense that, um, as long as I was getting the good grades and, performing well, they weren't too strict in terms of like, oh, like, you need to stop like playing video games right now and study, or like, I'm not gonna lie, there were days that I was like, I'm not gonna go to school today. I'm going to play video games, or I'm gonna like, do something else. And I'm like, and they were like, okay, like, it wasn't like a huge thing. Like they understood. They let me manage like my academic career how I wanted, as long as, my grades didn't drop and I was still getting good grades, which I did. Which is kind of a life lesson, because at the end of the
Right.
day, I mean, yes, attendance is important, but it's all about, getting stuff done. Um, and so in college, it's kind of more of the same of that. But I enjoyed going to lecture. I mean, I had some professors that I genuinely really loved learning from, and so I wouldn't miss a lecture because I really liked being there. But let's face it, we've all had classes that we really did not care about.
Yeah.
So there were a few of those too where I was just like, I could really care less about this random French anthropology class. So um, there were some of those. But yeah, academically, I mean, there was never any question. It was always just kind of with my parents, like, you have to get good grades, and
Right.
that's it. So that was the agreement, and that's what I did.
We're gonna wrap up the questions on your family, or it might be about your family, might not be. Who was your idol as a child, and who influenced you the most?
Hmm.
They could be the same person.
There's so many. It's weird. I always have like this like kind of trifecta of, there's like Captain Picard, there's like Michael Jordan, and then there's, like Spider-Man. It's weird. They're always like the three.
Mhm.
kind of people that I think of when I think of people who inspire me or people that really affected me growing up, people that I looked up to. Yeah, I mean, I like basketball as a sport as well. But I don't follow it as closely as I used to. But back when MJ played, man, I used to go crazy for it. And he was just so amazing. Just watching him play was just so inspiring. And I really liked his take no BS type of attitude where he had high standards for himself and he had high standards for everybody else. And I appreciated that. And I know that he got like a lot of crap for it or people thought he was, hard to be around. But at the end of the day, like he gave results and
Right.
I mean, he held himself to a high standard, which I really admired. With Captain Picard, I don't know. I love the way he just like commands a ship and just being a Trekkie, like he's my favorite captain. He always to me was the great balance between like intelligence and knowing and just knowing what to do in what situation, which I really think is valuable. And Spider-Man we kind of already covered, but
Right.
he's your guy that goes through all this stuff but still makes it through somehow and still manages to balance his two lives and make everyone happy in some way even though he at the end of the day ends up feeling like crap, but kind of putting others in front of himself, and that's what I liked about him.
Speaking of Star Trek, where do you stand on the Star Wars, Star Trek uh, war, or do you take George Takei's point of view that we all need to band together and fight against Twilight?
I'm going to go ahead and say I take George Takei's standpoint on this, because I like both, and for a long time I feel like I've had to like it's kind of like that type of thing where you have to like shield, like when you have your Trekkie friends, you have to be like the Trekkie, and then when you have
Right.
your Star Wars fans, you have to kind of like pander to them. Like I'll just show you right now. Like I have a special edition R2D2 droid, a phone.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's
but
awesome.
but to be completely ironic, all of my notification tones, like my text message tone, is Lieutenant Worf saying, "Captain, you have a message." So it's like it's completely
That's
ironic.
great.
R2D2 phone with like Star Trek noises and I have the beam up noise for another notification. So it's kind of silly. But then yeah, I have a little bit of both, and then I have my little USS Enterprise here on my desk. So it all like lives in harmony in my world, and I'm a big collector. I have toys all over the place. I can just keep pulling stuff, but
Right.
I love both of them. Although like I'm actually really enjoying kind of rediscovering a lot of the Star, because like I know there's a lot of stuff in Star Wars too, but with Star Trek it's just like there's so many seasons of episodes that I can just like dive into and watch and like
Right.
rekindle that feeling. And with Star Wars, I mean, of course, there's books and there's Clone Wars, there's all that stuff. But
Right.
I feel like Star Trek's a little more accessible. So, and speaking of George Takei, can I leave my seat to show you something? That's awesome.
Go forth.
Okay.
While she's
I,
away, I'm going to fix my contact out of screen. Oh,
okay.
oh,
You got to see this.
no.
So I have this autograph photo thanks to my coworker, Buddy, and it's from George Takei, and it says, "To Captain Neha, live long and prosper." And I have this framed in my room because it's
That's
fantastic.
awesome.
So yeah, maybe I'm a Trekkie. I don't
You
know.
just got so much nerd cred. Just, I mean, oh, wow.
If you actually look like over here, this is an autograph photo from Bruce Campbell. So there you go, little Army of Dead fun times over there. So
I remember first time watching that movie, and I mean, it was only a couple years ago. I was surprised that I had never seen it, and so good, so good.
yeah, it's
Anyway,
fantastic.
um, two more Star Wars questions. 3D,
Okay.
what about it? What do you think?
Meh.
Okay. And I'm drawing a blank. Oh, right. So, Cracked.com did a video about how George Lucas hates women. Did you by any chance see it?
I didn't, but
Okay.
recap.
Essentially what they say is that if you're male and you're looking for a role model in Star Wars, you can look to Obi-Wan or Luke or Han Solo or Boba Fett or anyone. For women, there's only one,
Okay.
Leia, because everyone else is either a slave or not named in the movies.
Pretty true.
So, does George Lucas hate women?
Hmm.
Just quick answer.
I think that he has a very traditional view of women. That's
So,
what I'm gonna say.
all right. Moving forward, moving on from Star Wars and Star Trek, and we're gonna ask some of the meatier questions right now. Were you
Okay.
raised religious?
Sorry.
Were you raised religious?
Um, I mean, yes. My parents are both religious, but it's the type of thing where I've always been the kind of weird one about this in my family because I've been, um, I've just been like, I don't know, I see both sides of it, like I do. I see I see the point of it, and I do feel that it's important to have faith in your life and believe that there's, something out there. But I think to feel that that's the only thing out there and that's what controls everything is kind of giving up. Um, one of my favorite phrases is on the idea of fate, which is that excuse me, I'm getting over a cough. It's half of what's given to you and it's half of what you make of it. So, what's given to you may be from, God or whatever you want to call it. I prefer to call it the force. And then what you actually perceive that as and what you do about it. So, a lot of times there's going to be things that happen that just, fly under your radar and you don't even understand and you may not act on it. But once in a while you catch that thing and then you see that it's an opportunity or it just makes you more aware of something. So I do believe there is a God, and I was raised Hindu, and I've always seen it more of a as a life philosophy than as a going to a temple and praying and that type of thing. I've always been very private about prayer or like a relationship to God. I've always kept that like to myself, and you know, I'm not much into the group setting of that, although I see the value in that from time to time. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I believe in karma and and dharma, which is the other side of it, which is good deeds. So you do good deeds and you get good things back to you. And there's a cosmic balance. I completely believe in those concepts. So I think it's just for me. It's like there's certain concepts in Hinduism that I really feel that I relate to, and that you know, and that's kind of just the way that I lead my life. And yeah.
How were you raised politically?
Liberally. My as we went through the kind of immigrant story and whatnot, my parents are Democrats. They've always, kind of voted, on that side. Um, I I still feel that I relate to that. Um, I am very interested to see what happens in the upcoming election, and I think I will, probably still stick Democrat. I think Obama's done some really amazing things, and I still support him. I I think that's just kind of where my ideals are on the side of the more liberal party.
Okay. Are there any charities or particular issues that you support?
Um, I think that there's been a few. I've worked with some charities that help children in India go to school. I support UNICEF. My cousin actually in India works for UNICEF, and when I was visiting, let's see, how many years back was that? Gosh, must be like 5 years back now. But we went to villages and I helped her like educate young girls about, their bodies and, like sex ed and a lot of that stuff. Because,
Mhm.
I mean, much of that is still considered taboo there. And, because it's taboo, uh, they don't understand what's going on and it's a bad situation.
Right.
So I really believe in educating that. So I always kind of like make it a point to help in that way whenever I go there. But yeah, that's probably the big stuff. Oh, and also, sorry, one more
Yeah.
thing. One friend of mine recently was actually diagnosed with leukemia. So I really would love if everyone, would be part of bethematch.org, which is, all you do is you take a cotton swab and swab that inside of your cheek and you send them and you're part of this registry. So, if anyone ever needs like a bone marrow transplant and, it's very hard. It's not easy to find that. It's a lot
Right.
harder than matching blood types, so I encourage everyone to be part of the registry, and I'm a proud member of that.
Well, to all of our listeners, if there's even one of you that goes and does that, that'll be a huge help. One of my good friends has leukemia as well, and I keep him in my thoughts often. And
Yeah,
it's it's always helpful to friends when they have people championing for them when they need it the most. So
absolutely.
uh,
It's an off. I mean, he had a chance. Basically, he had a 1 in 20,000 chance of finding a match, and he did. And I was really happy to hear about that. And he's going through the process now, which is not easy. But I just think any of those things where you can donate your blood or donate your marrow or donate something that you have plenty of, like go for it.
mhm.
Especially if you're literally saving a life, and it's a few moments of pain to save somebody, and that's something that I think is it's just great. That's the greatest gift that you could give.
You talked about traveling to India. Where else in the world have you traveled?
I've been to India, I've been to Beijing and China, I've been to Singapore, I've been to Hong Kong, I've been to St. Lucia, Costa Rica, I've been to Canada. I think that's basically it. I've been to like a few places. I have not been to Europe like at all, unfortunately. But I hope to go there soon because I'd love to explore it and I'd love to see what it's all about because it just seems so beautiful and interesting and rich with history. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was great. One trip I went to the Taj Mahal, which was amazing. And the next trip we went to the Great Wall of China, which was just,
Yeah.
it's really something when you see it in real life. I mean, you see it in postcards and you see it on online and whatnot. But when when you're there and you're like, you see that it just stretches forever in either direction. Um, it's really very beautiful. So that was wonderful, and I'd love to see more of the wonders of the world. I think that's going to be my thing. So
Well, the Great Wall of China is just such an amazing structure. Just
yeah,
the, the mobilization of civilizations in order to build such amazing structures. That's just fascinating.
it
I
is.
want to ask you about Hong Kong because I grew up there, so I'm very
Oh,
interested in your thoughts of Hong Kong.
when I went to Hong Kong, I was little, but I remember taking tours around and there being a lot of people and a lot of different smells. That was like what I remember of it. Like very like
Yeah.
hustle bustle, smells, people, like just, like that's kind of, and I remember like the shops and seeing stuff like that, but it's not like I wasn't older. I was, it's probably like, I don't know, maybe somewhere in the 10 to 12 regions. So I don't have a lot of recollection, but and we were there only for like a couple days or something like that. But I would love to go back now as an adult where I could actually probably enjoy, some of the stuff. And I would actually really love to go to, go to Seoul, go to Korea. That'd
Hmm.
be that'd be so amazing. Like I would really, really love to see that. And plus they have wonderful food. So I'm a total foodie. I love food.
Yeah.
So that'd just be great.
So into gaming questions. What got you into what you do now? You've sort of discussed that through college. Tell us about the sort of path that you took up until here.
Yeah, it's interesting that I've landed up in gaming. I've always been into gaming. It's always been kind of on the, I don't know, in like the background of my life. Like I obviously love tech. I love gadgets and web stuff like that. That was what I got into first because I was working for CNET and I worked for news. So that was everything from green tech to hardware to software to just really anything under the sun, which had to do with technology, which I enjoyed. It was really wonderful. And then from there, I worked at Revision 3 as a producer, and I was like the resident nerd bird. So I did quite a few segments about gaming, and I also like built my own lightsaber and did like a bunch of other geeky fun stuff. And I wrote and produced segments there, and actually there's a show called Techzilla, and I used to actually help produce that show. So it's still there, it's still going on, which is great. And then after that, I freelanced for Ziff Davis and another company called Mevio, and then I landed up at Justin TV, which was great. I mean, I learned, I'd always been into like live programming. Like I think live programming is so exciting and so just like thrilling and the interaction and all that. Again, the communication is just it's amazing. It's breaking that wall down and that's what I liked about working at JTV. And plus the people there were just great people. So, I worked for production at Justin TV and I helped people put together like their live streams and, make sure that they were successful and all that stuff. And then from there, I saw there was a job at IGN and I had always wanted to work at IGN. It was one of those companies that I always kind of like idolized. And, I felt that it was like this gaming mothership because it kind of is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of an amazing place. And so I actually started at IGN in a different role than my own. I started in a more business role where I dealt with analytics and tracked performance of different programs and stuff like that. And then David Ting approached me, who I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, but he's the GM of esports now at IGN, and I started volunteering with him just because I thought it was an interesting idea. And at the time, like as far as competitive gaming went, I mean, I knew about Street Fighter because I love Street Fighter. That's probably like one of my favorite games of all time. So he asked me, like, do you know what esports are? And I was like, oh yeah, like I know there's like fighting competitions and I know there's some PC-based stuff. I didn't know a whole lot about it. And then I just dove in deep and I,
Mhm.
learned all about StarCraft and that whole world. And now, there's League of Legends that we're supporting. So I'm trying to keep up and learn all about that too. But League of Legends is a little bit harder to get than StarCraft too. That's what I've realized. Like I actually really love and enjoy StarCraft now.
Mhm.
But League of Legends is taking me some time. But
I think that it's that there's so many champions, and knowing the ins and outs of each one and how they react to all the other ones. That's my biggest trouble with it.
I think that's what it is too. Honestly, it's hilarious because we were talking about this. I think at work either yesterday or today, and we were just saying like I was just like, yeah, I don't know why. Like it didn't take me that long. Like I picked up StarCraft and like now I know all about it and I enjoy watching it. Like I'm not good at playing it still, but like I really enjoy watching it. I think watching it's very fun and entertaining. But with League of Legends, I'm kind of just like, who is that? Because there's always like a new champion. So you're like,
Champion, yep.
person, like what does that person do? And it's like if you don't keep up with it or if you're not watching like regularly, it's really easy to fall behind. Whereas with StarCraft, it's basically like, okay, there's these players, these are their tactics, this is their micro, this is there's a series of units or types that they can use, and I guess there's less variables. Whereas with League of Legends, it just changes up so often that you just have to actively keep up with it. So
The
anyway,
metagame in StarCraft is always changing, but the actual gameplay doesn't change it as much. But whereas it's sort of the opposite in League of Legends, I would
right, and
assume.
it's just easier to follow StarCraft. Like once you get it, like once you understand, like because I'll be honest. I remember probably the first time that I sat down and I was like, what is going on right now? Like, what exactly? Or if I show my mom, she's like, like, what is this? Like, what is going on? Like, what is happening right now on the screen? Like my mom, and like she just doesn't get it, and which is fine because she doesn't have to. But so I understand that it's not like when you're watching something like Street Fighter or Tekken or any of those, even MVC, like you get what's going on. Like, okay, this guy's kicking this guy and he's gonna die. Very simple. Um, but in any case, yeah, I started volunteering, and then I made the switch and I hopped on board to the esports department, full time, and I was actually doing the math today, and I think it was actually a year ago. Like in March was when I first started producing promos for IPL One. So, here we are on the eve of, like, I guess we're less than 3 weeks away for IPL Four, which is I can't believe where we've gone, and basically less than a year.
Do you want to talk about IPL 4?
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. For those of you that don't know, it's going to be in Las Vegas, which is an amazing city. If for those of you who've never been there, it's going to be at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, which is just such a beautiful venue. It's chic, it's modern, it's techy. Like it has all the right feeling for like a big esports competition. And we're working really hard on just making sure that it's something that people will enjoy. And as you know, we are partnering with GOM TV, and we will be having the GSTL finals there, which is couldn't ask for anything better than that. So we're really excited. I met with Mr. Che and a few of his team over this past weekend at South by Southwest because we had a show match there. And he's a great guy. He's a lovely person. So I very much look forward to meeting the rest of his team, and they're going to be operating the whole like StarCraft side of things for us, which is going to be really cool. And then of course we have the League of Legends competition as well, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a jam-packed, fun 3 days. So I encourage everyone to get a ticket if you haven't. It's tickets.ign.com, and I believe we're close to sold out of VIP passes, but there's still tickets. So
The two questions about that. First off, I believe at Atlantic City there was free beer. Will that be the same case in Vegas? If so, if there is free beer, that is a perfectly good reason to buy your ticket right now, all you people.
Wait a minute. Where was there free beer? I did not get any free beer.
There was some. Maybe it wasn't free. Oh well.
Hey, there might. I don't know. Might have been. Like I would be the last person to know because I was chained to like master control desk because I was directing all day.
Right.
Like so I have no idea. I barely saw the light of day in Atlantic City when we were there because I was just working the whole time. But there I can guarantee there's probably gonna be beer. I know that for sure. So you can grab a beer and sit down and watch some StarCraft. Like what's better than that?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that anyone that's weighing the options of whether or not to buy a ticket and buy a flight out there, if there is free beer, you can make everything back through that consumption. Anyway, moving away from beer, secondly, how was South by Southwest?
It was great. I did not expect that many people to come out, like, to be totally honest. Like, I thought, okay, yeah, we'll probably fill some seats. Like, there'll be people there, whatever. I mean, there were true, honest to God fans there. Like, we started up for League of Legends at 12. There were people in seats, like, eagerly waiting, like, excited, and it was clear to me that they weren't just like passersby. They were guys who came here for the League of Legends tournament, and I was thrilled. And we had every seat filled, and the aisles were filled, and everything. And then once StarCraft started, like, oh boy, like, you couldn't even get a seat before because people were like, they had their little thunder sticks and they were like ready to go. And we actually had to have a fire marshal called in because there were no aisles because basically literally everyone from the hall like just bum rushed the stage. So there were like, from a radius, it was just a bunch of like a whole arc of people. Right. There's some amazing photos up that our photographer Oliver Yu took. But yeah, there was a ton of people and a ton of energy in the crowd. It was so loud that I could barely hear my peers in Master Control, and because there was people behind us for rows and around us and in front of us. So it was great. I was so thrilled. I was so happy to have that many people there to enjoy our show, and live production's always a surprise, and of course we always, there's always hiccups and silly things that happen, but at the end of the day, I think people really enjoy themselves, and that's what really makes me happy, and makes my colleagues and I wanna do a good job.
Last question before we get into the final 10. One of the things that's most fundamental and dearest to all gamers is their gamer tag. What is yours? And explain its origin.
My gamer tag is Madam Web. It comes from Spider-Man. Surprise, surprise. She's a character in Spider-Man, and the reason why I always liked her was that she was a feminine character of power. So she's she's not like your regular kind of superhero girl type of person, but she's like almost like this like an oracle type of person that kind of knows all, and almost like very Q-like, if you would, if I can mix the different dorkiness together. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's just kind of, it's a powerful woman in the Spider-Man universe, and so that's it.
So getting to these last final questions, these questions are the same every single week.
Okay.
The same 10 questions, they're rapid fire, answer whatever comes to your mind, and let's go. And we'll do shout outs and thank yous afterwards. What is your favorite game?
Street Fighter.
What is your least favorite game?
I don't know. God. You know what? I don't know. I don't know what my least favorite game is. You know what? I don't really like first-person shooters that much anymore. I used to love Metal Gear Solid and some of those, but I can't get into Halo. I'm just gonna say it. There you go.
What excites you about gaming?
The possibilities.
What turns you off about gaming?
Lag.
What sound in gaming do you really love?
Hadouken.
What sound in game do you hate?
Gosh, probably the sound of the disc spinning on an Xbox when the red light of death, the red ring of death is going. It's depressing.
What's your favorite insult to throw at opponents?
In your face.
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Ooh. I would love to produce music.
What profession would you not like to do?
I would not like to be in any industry that has to do with sewage or waste removal.
If heaven exists and you could only play one game for all of eternity, what would you play?
Ooh. You know what? I think I'd probably play Mario Kart just because it's so fun and whimsical.
On that note, do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been, one of the funnest, probably most fun interviews that I've done, and I appreciate it. And for all of you watching, I'd love if you could follow me on Twitter. I'm at Nehalia, so it's Nehalia. And it's the same on Facebook. And I hope you guys stay tuned to what we're doing at IGN Pro League. And, if you ever don't like what we're doing, or if you do like what you're doing, tweet at me, Facebook me. And we will listen. I will respond. Like, I promise. Like, that's my mission. So, and thank you for all of your support out there. We appreciate it. It's what motivates me every day to get up and go to work. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on this show. I've really enjoyed doing it. I want to thank Underline Entertainment again for being the best sponsors out there and making awesome theme music for us. I want to thank all of Stim TV from me personally for giving me the opportunity to do this show on a regular basis. I want to thank Wigan for stepping in as the stream producer this week. And follow me on Twitter. It's right underneath my name, or my video right there on the overlay. It's @RealDac. And Uh, I guess if Wigan types me his Twitter, then I'll tell you all what to follow him at. Just follow him at MLG_Wigan, and I'll see you all in the near future. Ta-ta.